All right. Well, I am here with my old friend Neil Cleary, aka Tad Cautious, and it is the Tad Cautious avatar that we're primarily interested in here. Although Neil wears many, many hats, and you can read about them in the little introduction. Neil is a broadcaster and has been on the air for ever. As a matter of fact, I remember listening to your radio show on WRUV
Yeah.
uh, religiously and was a fan of your band and your music, but also, even early on, really thought that this was just, a special talent that you had and a gift that you share
Wow.
so openly.
Thanks.
And much later, we had all kind of moved into our grown up lives. Um, I was at SiriusXM working at the satellite radio company SiriusXM.
Space
I had
radio.
been the director of music licensing, and Neil had just launched the Bunny Fish Festival Radio on SiriusXM's sort of still new Fish Channel.
Hmm.
And this was what, 5 or 6 years ago?
It was a pandemic project.
Yeah,
So I think it was maybe June of 2020.
yeah. So when we first moved from Washington, D.C., where I had been living with my family, to the Pacific Northwest, um, I was still working with SiriusXM, which was great. I did a couple more years remotely. We just kept up the remote work, and I was
When you're on space
happy to
radio,
do
it
that.
doesn't matter where in the
It doesn't
galaxy
matter
you
where you
are.
are. Yeah, space is everywhere. We are
Hmm.
space. Um, anyway, I was really happy to discover that, and it's been a part of our lives, and especially with me and our youngest daughter. She knows your voice
Oh, cool. Oh, wow.
almost as well as mine. Yeah, and to this day, we play
Should
we
I say
play
some
chess.
disciplinary things? Should I add in
Yeah, you
some
should add some stuff. You just say now, Ruby.
right. Get your boots
Yeah,
on.
put away your laundry. I think would be the one.
Great. Great.
You
Whatever
just
developmental
drop in a
stage,
few of those.
I can be a Siri for any parental moment you need.
Yeah, no, that's fabulous. And, Kid Cautious too. We hear his baby voice, but he's a big dude now.
He's 12. And we're
Hmm.
gonna, I think, re-record that intro very soon
Uh-oh.
to make it more
Well,
accurate.
Ruby will be really mad. She'll write an angry letter. I'll tell her where to send
It'll
it.
be our first. I'll frame it.
Your first angry letter. Yeah, yeah, that scans. Anyway, I was really happy about that, and it's a very eclectic show that fits kind of a lot of my music aesthetic sensibilities. Right, big fan right out of the gate. And then more recently, I have discovered the Tad Cautious All Ears show on Vermont Public Radio, which is also very eclectic, but in a different way. And we can talk about some of that in a minute. My real sort of starting point, though, is when SiriusXM and/or Fish came to you about doing the show on SiriusXM on the Fish channel. Allegedly, your response was, "Do I have to play Fish?"
Well, no, there's a couple stories getting conflated here.
Okay.
When I first was asked about doing a small radio station at the festivals back in '97, that was my question. It was sort of a radical idea to one have a festival, sort of
Hmm.
British, European style music festivals were not the norm. It was before Bonnaroo, Coachella, etc.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was a kind of a new idea, and then to have it based around one band was also very new. So on top of those two new things, we're
Adding a
also
radio
going to
station.
have a radio station,
Yeah.
and that was my first question: do I have to play all fish? But they very emphatically said no, and
Mhm.
I haven't to date
So the
because
template is
there's
it
enough,
was kind of there.
the one of the main duties of the radio station was to broadcast the sets to people who were not on site or maybe who were in campgrounds or parking
Yeah.
lots.
Yeah.
So there was plenty of fish music going out through that, and then the
Yeah.
rest of the time we're basically just a free format
Yeah.
college radio
And
style.
here's some Brian Eno and Robert Fripp. Yeah, or
Mm-hmm.
something.
And really sort of Venn diagram people to the off world.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'll correct another element there, which is, um, so they came to me about the terrestrial radio station in 97 or so,
Yeah.
and then in 2020, in the madness of early pandemic, when we were all like, 2 weeks, this could last 4.5 weeks.
Yeah.
I reached out to them and said, hey, I'm just sitting here,
Right.
and why don't we launch a festival radio offshoot in the same way that we kept people company at the festivals? We can also keep people company over
During
the
this. Yeah.
Sirius channel.
And then it just kept going. Well, that was very clever of you.
You know, it was a good idea.
It
I'll
was a
take,
good
I'll,
idea.
I'll own that.
And so there's probably part of a service-oriented mindset here from the start, because educating fish heads that other music exists is sometimes a labor, but
Mm,
you seem to treat it as an opportunity in a way that's super delightful.
thanks. I'm
Yeah.
glad that you see and appreciate that. It was, it's changed over the years. It's a lot of things. The experience is a lot of things, and it involves all sorts of different perspectives and all sorts of different practices.
Hmm.
People who, what I'm trying to say in a fancy way is people who see fish, there's a bunch of different kinds of people. There was, I think, in the past, a bigger contingent of folks who were really laser focused on it and made it their whole lives, and in the common parlance, made it their whole personality.
Hmm.
But I think since then, and some of that comes with the way that the band didn't have other performers at festivals, didn't have opening acts. They were able to really fly below the radar or fly above. They were able to set themselves apart in a really useful
Hmm.
way.
Hmm. For
Some of the
sure.
offshoot of that was that there wasn't a lot of opportunity for peripheral learning.
Awareness of other. It's like
Yep.
Bob
Yep.
Weir, R.I.P., said, the problem with Deadheads is they tend to only listen to the Grateful Dead.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
However, I really have learned over the years such a respect for the audience
Hmm.
and for the way that a lot of folks have grown up and grown into their musical listening
Absolutely. And
and
there's
and
nothing
visiting.
wrong. I mean, the old sort of hater in me that was like held too tightly to all of my own sort of bullshit ideas about what I was supposed to and not supposed to tolerate in
Hmm.
music, and not
Yep.
just in music, in the communities that emerge around it and stuff.
Yep.
Um, Having spent, well, matured hopefully in some ways on my own, but also having spent some time observing Deadhead culture, for example, which is an
Yep.
adjacent musical culture, my takeaways are pretty much the same. What you're
Hmm.
saying really makes
Yep.
sense to me. But
There's that great. I keep on coming back to that, and I've probably mentioned it before. There's a Flaming Lips album that says the title of which is "Finally the Punk Rockers Have Started Taking Acid," and
yes, that's sure.
I
Uh-huh.
feel like there's a similar thing
Sure.
happening
Hmm.
now where you know finally the people who were too cool for it, I would count myself at times in that
Hmm.
number,
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Some of
have
those walls
stopped
don't need
being.
to stand, they're
It's the same way that when you were walking down the street in uh, England in the 70s and you had a safety pin in your pocket or something. It's something else. Somebody else had a different badge. You
Yeah,
were
right. Yeah, the
enemies.
signifiers. Hmm.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. So yeah, I've grown in respect and understanding for the audience, and also I've I really love the opportunity to uh, play in that
Yeah,
space with people's
absolutely.
curiosity. One of the big things that it's also one of my little hobby horses that I love to say, but you can say what you want about Fish the band and their music, but they've created the world's best listeners.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
would contend that they've created the world's best listeners,
Hmm.
which, and following on with that, you could get a Fish fan psyched about a Melvins show
Hmm.
and take them
Totally.
to a Melvins show.
Yeah.
I don't know that you could take a Melvins fan respect to that crew, and I love that music and the band and the fandom, but you could not do the
Yeah, it's
reverse.
tough. It doesn't always go in reverse. It's funny when I go to shows now. I'm going to Portland, and I go to quite a few shows. I always catch OCs, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Not a local band, but West Coast band,
Yeah.
California band. And when I go to those shows, it reminds me of like the times before things got really solidified into like alternative music or jam music or
Yep.
whatever, and I love that energy. You'll see like freaky punks and crust punkers and
Yep.
tweakers and
There's a whole
sun
moment that people have forgotten
sun
about,
gods and
which is like,
goddesses.
yeah, I was listening to a great podcast called One Song where they break down splits and stems and really go sort of musicologically into a bunch of famous songs. And they were talking about um, the Alanis Morissette "You Ought to Know," and
My
you
God.
know, Flea and Dave Navarro play on it,
I know, and don't get
and
me started about the isolated bass track because there's just an abomination. It's an
sure.
abomination.
And they made a really good point, which is in that moment before those things were codified in the 90s, there was kind of a punk, funk, folk, you know,
Very
the same
porous.
sort of
Yeah,
soup that, Ani DeFranco
sure,
emerged from. Um,
sure.
so there was a sense of experimentation that preceded the genre border.
Well, that's what I think about your programming philosophy. If we can sort of
Let's.
talk about that a little bit, like it seems to both honor and maybe even expand that in this medium. Because the cool thing about satellite radio is it's national. The cool thing about
Mhm.
local radio is that it's local, but they're kind of two
Mm,
different flavors.
yeah.
A lot of what this programming philosophy, if we can call it that, seems to be present at birth with the original Bunny, which is great, and maybe even before that with your RUV show back in the day.
Mm,
But can you
yeah.
articulate more about what this philosophy actually is and where you feel like it comes from?
Mm. What is my philosophy? I think it
Have fun all the time. Have a good
stems
time all the
from
time.
May- maybe I when music grabs me, it grabs me in a way that funny things grab me, which
Mm.
is an aha awakening
Mhm.
moment that takes you by surprise.
Feels fresh.
The
Yeah.
best joke is something that you hear the first time feels fresh.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I was at Fish's Mexico Festival and I DJ by the pool some days, which is what it sounds like. But it's a
Sweet.
fun opportunity
This sounds
for
so
me to
good.
meet folks that have listened to the show and see them in personal. It is. And somebody came by people are, comfortable engaging or just passing by. And uh, somebody came up this year and said they did this like wagging finger thing, like they had my number, and they were like, "Sense of humor through music, sense of humor through music," and I was like, "Oh yeah."
Hmm.
That's the
Hmm.
it's the same. I like dorky and funny music, but I'm not attached to novelty, but I love the way that humor has talons or sticky parts that
Yeah, yeah.
reach
There's
into
a
you
there's a
in a bad way. So
brightness
I
to
like
it.
what grabs you. Hmm. And so I like playing unpredictable things
Yeah.
and not again, not locked to novelty or comedy necessarily, but that you can even go deep with it. You can go to something that's very emotionally loaded. But
Yeah.
you want to also respect us here. I'm doing a bad job of trying to articulate
Well,
my programming philosophy, but it
it's
is
hard to
to
describe the ineffable, trust me.
well, and I think you can do that through metaphor, which
Yes,
is
indeed.
something is like something else is like something else is like something
Indeed.
else, and then you start to see that there's a through line or there's a shade of color that matches in these two things that were previously thought to be different.
That's for
So,
sure. Yeah.
yep.
And that's the thing, like wildly different music and wildly different show themes, or even, ones that have resonance with each other. I like that you don't lock yourself into one or another frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I was wondering, like, there does seem to be a little bit of a difference between the feel of the bunny and the feel of all ears.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's almost like there's a knob that's like the out meter or the adventure meter or something.
Yep.
Turn it down.
You got it right away. I wanted to have all ears because I wanted to do I learned so much doing the bunny,
Hmm.
and it is a bit of a bubble sometimes. I love
Hmm.
the folks in the bubble.
Hmm.
I wanted to do something with a foot outside of that world.
Hmm.
I also want to, with the bunny, I want to respect that somebody early on, I was sort of searching for some reactions, and I found somebody on Reddit saying, "Why the fuck is 100 gex on Fish Radio right now?" And I, I loved that, but
Oh, I love that too. It's so
I was
great.
also like, honestly, why the fuck is 100 gex on Fish Radio right
Yeah.
now? So it helped me realize that, like, okay, you want to take people where they are
Yes.
and sort of give them the next few
Yeah.
steps. So
Hmm.
if they're listening to Fish Radio, they might be like, okay, I can see how this
Hmm.
um,
Yeah. Connect. You can see how
connects.
this connects.
Connects. So broad strokes, I wanted to do with all ears a non-fish scene centric thing, and so I had to distinguish. Okay, what's going to be my sort of stylistic difference between these two things?
Yeah.
And I think Fish fans are ready to get weirder faster and
Yeah.
go farther. They've
No
had
doubt.
that
Hmm.
education and that
They're primed.
they're primed.
Yeah.
And All Ears is very public radio. It's
Hmm.
very
Hmm.
Vermont public radio. Vermont has a certain demographic,
Hmm.
and I think for where the culture of Vermont is now, that's kind of what I'm, serving
Yeah. I mean,
all
there
ears.
is a classic eclectic Vermont musical vibe or
Yep.
patina. I mean, I
Yep.
remember it, back in, this is not going to make sense for anyone who isn't, a Vermonter, but The Point, for example, during those years
They
of
persist.
eclectic freeform.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
still, yeah, that's great to hear. Yeah. So I was wondering, like, what might have influenced you. I'm pretty sure I've heard you mention things like Prairie Home Companion and
Hmm.
Afropop Worldwide,
Yep.
Hearts of Space, which I think is wild.
Hmm.
These are all wildly different shows, right? But
Hmm.
they're united by that similar quality, which is
Yeah.
someone or someone's with a genuine perspective who feels inspired to share.
Yep.
Is that the through line, or is there? And what else made an impression in your formative
Yeah.
radio years?
A, a couple of the big influencers were the fact that I have a fantastic older brother who is
Hmm.
a real, like, deep learner and, you know, in his
Incredible
teenage
musician
years,
too, in case.
incredible musician, but in his teenage years, just like absorbing and exploring
Yeah,
such weirdness. And
yeah,
so, like, I wanted to be like him. I was also
yeah.
getting sort of, gaining knowledge from his exploration in music.
And he has a name too, right? It's Tom Cleary.
It
Is
is Tom Cleary, and it continues to be. And he thought WRUV was super cool, so
yeah,
I thought WRUV was super cool, our local college
yeah,
radio station.
yeah.
And there was reggae, and there was punk rock, and there was experimental and everything. So the college radio ethos was pretty formative for me. I would say that that takes up a
Steeped
lot of the
in, yeah,
yep,
steeped in.
steeped in. And then yeah, the music scene and the music scene in Vermont was pretty eclectic and remains pretty eclectic too. I will say
Yeah.
also a big leap happened. Two big leaps happened for me. I lived in Los Angeles for a good chunk of time and
Yep.
listened to KCRW,
Oh,
and the
represent. Yeah.
for sure. And I also in the last few
Now
years,
my local KCRW. I mean, it's
yeah,
up there in
yeah,
Seattle, but
yeah. Well, you got your KEXP and you got your I think
yeah,
it's
KEXP. That's what I meant in
yeah.
Seattle and KCRW.
And I also listen to BBC Six Music, which is sort of their music fan channel.
Yeah, that's some
Iggy
good
Pop has a show
curation.
there. Giles Peterson is a huge guy for me.
Mm-hmm.
So those are two recent examples of ways to make exploration relatable.
Yeah, for sure. But bringing it back down to the grassroots a little bit,
Hmm.
we grew up in Burlington at a particular moment when the scene was incredibly generative, it seemed.
Hmm.
Um, the Pants, which was,
Hmm.
a band that you were in, we all
Yep.
loved. Your college radio show, which you were talking about, in that environment. But there was this whole ecosystem of people making and sharing music and art with what felt like real community stakes. Like even if you took a position like I sometimes did, stupidly, like fuck that, or whatever. Like
Yeah.
you were still part of it. How much of what you do now feels continuous with that?
Hmm. Interesting. I was thinking as you were talking about that, it was everything felt very tangible and very reachable. Like you could Xerox up a zine and hand it out, or put up a
Yeah,
poster and make an impact by doing a postering run, or
yeah,
have a local radio show. So things
yeah.
felt within arm's reach.
Hmm.
That was the really powerful aspect of it. Or you could make a phone call and have a gig.
Yeah, the
Or
organic
you could.
cauldron.
I was. I had a job uh, on like a catalog ordering uh, data center sort of job, and I sat there and I thought, well, I want to have a band, and I made two or three calls and I had a gig and I had a band. It also
Yeah,
took knowing the people involved, but
yeah,
I was like, oh, great, and we'll call it this, and it'll be on March
yeah,
and you'll play drums, and then we were like, well, great, let's get together. So it all felt very attainable.
yeah. I
And
mean,
then
maybe it's
if
a
you talk,
factor of youth as well, but
yeah, yeah,
there's
and
definitely
then
something in it.
yeah, how that feels contiguous now. Yeah, I think we were able to do things on the festival radio station on the day to day of it that apart from some FCC regulations, we were kind of on our own to do what we want. So,
Yeah,
um, the Fish organization and the band have really cultivated that um, sense of freedom and
yeah,
appreciating
yeah,
your contributions, as opposed to the corporate
top
checking
down.
in, making sure that folks are aligned with the corporate voice.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Freeform radio. I mean, I personally have an affinity for the idea. We're old enough to have, sort of grown up at the tail end of it, and some of these places, these geographically isolated places like Vermont, maybe there's still pockets, or we were able to have pockets of that ethos still exist in the
mhm.
broadcast medium. But it's old, When I was writing the Dead book, I spent a lot of time thinking about what's his name, Bill Donahue. Fucking, I just wrote a book.
You mentioned him before, but I'm
Yeah,
not
so
familiar with him.
he's like, he was sort of the guy that conjured freeform radio, FM radio, as a expressive medium, and there was always a kind of community oriented feel to it, even as it was totally freeform.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think about that, and I think about radio. It's always been more than music delivery, even where that is it, even where it's, meant to be.
Yeah,
At its best, it feels like a kind of companionship or fellowship, or, as I
absolutely. And
mentioned
that's,
before, like a kind of community service.
yeah.
And I was thinking, you come from a background like your mom was a Universalist minister, right?
Yep.
And I'm wondering, like, if any of that background of service, like, and also informs even, I don't know, maybe you haven't thought of it consciously, but like,
Mm.
is that part of what happens when you're putting music in front of people?
Wow. I would love to think of my motivations as deliberately altruistic. Have been thinking recently about the effect of my parents. So my dad was a Jesuit
Right.
priest
And your
for a
dad
long
was,
time, and my
yes.
mom was a nun, and she went on to
Yeah.
work with the Unitarians. And they were the sort of true believers who the church didn't really. They're like the people who actually believe in America and do American things
Yeah.
that
Civic
are
duty and
that are
tolerance.
absolutely, yeah. And they're like, well, no, we're all about repression and even children here, but you guys somehow didn't get the so being
I
silly
feel you.
enough to
I feel
believe
you.
those things, they just continued when they were out of their vestments one
Yeah.
and they broke the vows and got married, and but they just continued doing things that led by their heart and their values.
There you go.
So,
Hmm.
I there is a great big naive part of me that I think people are like that.
I love that. It's so
Hmm.
precious. I never
Yeah,
lose that,
yeah. And
Mhm.
I've definitely been exposed to awfulness and
Yeah, the opposite. Hmm.
yeah, sure, and became the cool worldly person that I am now. But there's a soft, chewy center for
Yeah.
sure. So I think when you're doing radio in a free form way, you're sharing your excitement, you're
Yes.
telling a story, you're sort of
Yes.
sharing yourself. So I think some of that
Yes.
probably bleeds out naturally. I
Well, I
do
mean, that's why
didn't.
it's like, oh, the sun's out, and it sort of feels like that. Neil's show's on. The sun's
Hmm.
out. Uh,
Back to what you said about companionship. That's what I loved about the radio growing up. I would listen to
yes.
like WVMT AM
Mhm.
radio, and just the sense that somebody was there riding
Mhm.
along with you
Mhm.
in a, they weren't on the phone with you talking
Right.
directly to you, but they
Right.
were sort of just peripherally there to be a companion. So I
Well,
think,
it's much warmer than being like, even though there is a remove, it's different than being like a book author, for example, where I get
mhm,
postcards and weird
yep,
emails and stuff like
yep,
that. And then, of course, there's, the critical universe where if you're writing for a market that, those people notice, which, I
yep,
do. And so there's that kind
yep,
of response. But,
hmm,
those are paid professionals. And then there's the folks on Goodreads and Amazon. And I don't read those, I
hmm,
just don't.
yep,
But so it feels like kind of isolated. In a
yeah,
sense, you do
yeah.
all of this stuff on the back end and you put it out there, and there's no real sense of living feedback. And
It's
even
so
though
weird.
radio is one way, there when it's live and when it's live and local, I think is the magic sauce of true community radio. It's
I love that
amazing
you said
that
that.
community can be defined as largely as the national fish community in
Mm-hmm.
the continental United States with satellite. But
Yep.
I also love that idea of place and
Mm-hmm.
space. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
You know, I haven't really. You're right. The community is there's that word gets
yeah,
it's been used
it's
a
like
lot and it's been
genius.
it's been
The
tied
guy's a
right.
genius, or
I
she's a
remember somebody
genius.
in an activist circle saying like, "I'm suspicious of the word community when you're using words like the IV drug using community." Like there is, and
Yeah,
I'm sure that there is the community, but it's just a strange way to that word has been
fellowship
bandied about. However, I
and my
will say
axe.
that there is a community of people that really deal with each other in a day-to-day way.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
in a larger sense, there is sort of a national community of people that you feel a kinship with. And then there's also a sense of you have access to people's hearts,
The
where
human
if
part.
if somebody was into Fish and had a moment with them, they've been such a cultural force, like the
Yes.
way that you see a movie or a TV show,
Yes.
you hear a radio station. Like, I think they hit a lot of people as like before the internet, that was their portal to
Absolutely.
other worlds and other information. So even if you grew up and you haven't, you haven't been in the church in a while, and you're coming back,
Yes.
or you turn on Fish Radio on on Sirius, you can. It's really cool to have
Your
that
heart,
entree.
your heart reconnects to that like this. Yeah.
Sure, sure, and
Yeah.
people will really open up to you.
It's
Yeah.
funny. A lot of that is sort of like, I didn't even realize like some of these, I don't know if they're motivations, but some of what you say sounds really familiar to me because even though I was not a deadhead, and in fact hated the Grateful Dead, loathed them, wanted to kill them with fire,
Sure,
the
sure.
whole thing for a long, long time, um,
As we all thought we should,
as we all
and
thought
thought
we
we had
should.
to. Hmm.
But one thing that the sort of, I felt gratitude for being in a position to surface some of the spiritual, to lack of for the lack of a better word, feelings, senses, associations, valence that people had with the Grateful Dead over 35 years, and now well after the band's existence. And that maybe, in a way, that if they find something that reflects back to them those experiences, that will be a form of nourishment,
Hmm.
and maybe re-inspire some things.
Yeah.
And then also contextualize some things that might have been mysterious, but nonetheless felt. And so that was part of it, beyond like telling cool stories and really looking at some of the things that I was interested in, which was, how does the intersection of psychedelic culture, beat culture, and the emergence of all of these things, including Western convert Buddhism, Dharma,
Hmm.
fit together in a way that we can tell a story and entertain people. But somewhere beneath that was still that idea of serving a community or a fellowship of folks, even if I
Hmm.
wasn't really born part of that tribe, you
You know what
know?
this makes me think of
Yeah.
is the PMRC in the 80s. Tipper Gore, the wife of Al Gore, wanted to create a council to basically review and sometimes censor and rate music.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was a real McCarthyist
Sure
time
was.
in popular music, and Frank Zappa
Yep.
testified. But the guy who,
Some of that
and
stuff's going to be in my next book, by the
you
way.
know where I'm going with this, the guy who made a difference, I think, to a lot of people was John Denver.
Yes.
And he
Yeah.
showed up and he said, I don't know what he said, but the fact that he showed up for the sanctity of freedom of expression and
Hmm.
music, and he allied himself like a guy who, back to the things that don't seem to be the same, but there's a through line.
Yes. Hmm.
So he really, when you overlay one color with another, you get a third color that you didn't expect. So just
Yes.
when you overlay John Denver and all
D.
of his,
Snyder.
purity, yeah, with D. Snyder and Frank Zappa, you have, that's the Holy Trinity right there, right? You have the the God, the devil, and
Hmm.
the intellectual.
That other
Yeah,
guy. Well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, part of the thing is like that magical blend that comes up that you didn't really anticipate. The
yeah,
algorithms are really good at giving people what they already like,
yeah.
but your ethos seems to be grounded in something different, which is that unexpected adjacency. You were talking about how humor works that way, that freshness,
And
that
the
the left
sacred and
field connection that sort of
yep, yep.
reframes everything.
The secular and the sacred,
Yeah.
like you. I love gospel music, and it can just like take me apart
Yeah.
immediately. And I've been lucky enough to play in some gospel choirs, and just like to be in that room
Yeah.
vibrating at
Yeah.
that intensity
Well, that's what it
is
is.
amazing. It is mosh pit energy. You
That's what it is.
play,
Yep.
you know, the
Elevated. Hmm.
yeah, you play like
Vibration.
a choir, and then you play Slayer, and some for a minute there you're like, yes, we're
Yes.
all this
Yeah.
is all this same energy.
Very bright and radiant. Yeah,
Yeah.
undeniable. Undeniable. Do you think that like we're losing something here, when the discovery is only recommendation, or do these things have a place to live together? The answer is yes. We know we're in some ways we are, but
Sure,
what about
sure.
a third way?
I love a third way. I love a
I
secret
love a
third
third way
thing.
too.
Yep,
Yep.
yep. Um, so yeah, how can we live in this time of AI generated playlists and
Yeah.
recommendation feed and whatnot, and where I think the question is, well, of course, on it's a many layered answer. You need to have regulation for industries,
Hmm.
um, the same way
That would
that we
help.
need, the
Hmm.
same way that we don't want toxic chemicals in our baby food. You
Well, maybe
need
we do
some
now. Okay, maybe that's
some
what we want. All
you
right.
need you need people getting properly paid for streams and whatnot, and
Yeah.
also protecting against us from AI,
Yeah.
etc. And I think there's a lot of creative answers to that. And I love seeing it as a creative problem.
Yeah.
One of the things I've seen is, where do you take it? What does your Spotify, you know, just a pipe of extruded music coming at you? Where do you take it? Do you just let it be like a breeze blowing in your face and then you walk away, or do you notice things? Do you notice people's names? Do you notice artists? Do you go follow them in spaces where you can really contribute to them? Do you I think buying vinyl is a great way to do that. I think going to shows and buying merch is a great way to do that. And do you advocate for their rights? What do you do with the music once you've heard it?
Yeah, where does it connect? I think that's really a good question to ask, but sometimes I feel that what we really need is a bottom-up kind of movement that feels that it can reclaim expression as something independent from markets, period, as a
Mm-hmm.
community
Yeah.
value, as a human value, and then find the ways to support that. And some of them, of course, will be, could be at least, aided by the many conveniences of digital technology.
Yeah,
You know?
like start from that
Yeah.
passion and have
Mhm.
it grow through the digital tools,
Yeah.
rather than have the digital tools dictate
The
our enthusiasm
the
to
problem
us.
is if those tools are already kind of part of a fairly intractable and well, I don't want to get into a whole critique of. I've already lived that life. A
Hmm.
structural critique of
Yeah,
media and the policies that enable what we have,
yeah.
um, which isn't really serving anyone other than the folks who can aggregate information and harvest attention at massive scale.
And those people have the worst life.
Yeah, I can
I
just
I
yeah.
think they have the worst life. And so, something that somebody said, maybe it was like David Byrne in one of his sort of koan like pronouncements, was like, we live heaven and hell every
We do.
day.
Samsara and
And
Nirvana is
mhm,
our mind.
and those the people that our tech overlords are not having good sex,
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
not having good laughter, and they're not having good community, and they are living in hell, and we are living in
Yeah.
heaven.
Yeah.
I did not
Unfortunately.
expect this to get here.
Yeah.
um can you start a long arc of wrap up that will
Yeah.
make this all make sense in
Yeah.
about 8 minutes?
Yeah, I mean we're landing the plane anyway. I
We
kind
did
of
start
think
talking about God, yeah.
I kind of think that I like the idea of just doing it. It's not so much of like look at me walk it while I talk it or something like that, but just walking it would be sufficient.
Mm.
And I think that broadcasting with the kind of intention that you have is emblematic of that attitude, which I think is a healthy and healthily contagious attitude.
Thanks. I'm really glad to see that reflected and affirmed. That's really cool.
Hmm.
And I've truly never really thought about maybe all that much of a little bit, but I've never really thought all that much about what drew me to radio in the first place and why I love it now. I think
You know, sometimes it's nice to hang out with a friend that helps you see some cool
yeah,
qualities in yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.